Hi, my name is Jasmine Colvin, and today for my persuasive speech, I will be discussing why teens under the age of 17 should be able to be playing mature rated games regardless of the violence it may or may not contain. In my audience, I have my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother. Do video games cause violence in today's youth? Are mature rated games the source of disturbing and aggressive tendencies? These are some of the thoughts that run through the minds of parents as they monitor their children's games for extreme violence, sexual content, and anything else graphic. If you've heard of such games such as Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, and Grand Theft Auto, chances are you've heard of a couple of M-rated games. While some of those are the more notable examples noted for their war violence and extreme violence toward civilians, there are some other M-rated games that have none of those elements and yet are banned from certain households. The ESRB, or the Entertainment Software Rating Board, was set in place for parents and other consumers so they would be able to know what age range the game was made for. I've been playing video games since I was about 5 years old. Since I was born around the time games such as Mortal Kombat and Night Trap were making headlines for their controversies, I feel like my parents, my mother mostly, wanted to shelter me from that kind of violence and wanted me to stick to more age-appropriate content. My first instance of playing a mature rated game was over at another family member's house. He was about 15 years old and I was about 7. He was playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City and asked if I wanted to play alongside with him. I had no idea what the game contained or what it entailed, but I played it anyways. In my short duration of playtime, I stole cop cars, killed law enforcement, picked up prostitutes, and participated in gang activities. Did this make me want to go outside and do all of this on my own? Of course not. Yet I felt that my parents thought that I wasn't mature enough or had enough common sense to be able to handle the content that was presented before me. Teens under the age of 17 should be able to play M-rated games without their parents or guardians having to worry about them going down a violent path. And today I will be discussing why the ESRB was set in place, why teens should be able to play mature rated games without their parents hovering over their heads constantly, and why there could be a link between violence in real life and violence in video games. There is a reason why games are rated the way they are, and it is all due to the ESRB rating system. First, there are several reasons as to why the ESRB rating system was established. With the release of an arcade game known as Mortal Kombat, this laid the foundation of a franchise that continues to be popular to this very day. It is also one of the reasons the ESRB exists. The game was released in arcades to start in 1992 and was then released to home consoles in 1993 to the SNES, which is a Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and the Sega Genesis. The games used the digitally captured actors and bloody, violent fatality moves caused a stir when it was first released. Possibly the most controversial fighting game ever to be made, Mortal Kombat's blend of over-the-top violence and thrilling combat proved irresistible to gamers. Nintendo censored the game by removing all of the blood and fatalities, while Sega left in all of the gore, but were forced to establish their own gaming rating system, giving the game an MA13, mature audiences over the age of 13. The full-motion Sega CD game, Night Trap, was another reason that the ESRB was established. It told the story of a group of young women having a slumber party in a huge house, and it is up to you, the main character, to monitor and protect them from being killed and trapped by vampiric enemies. While the premise seems tame by today's standards, most of these women were scantily clad in nightgowns, and this was seen as sexually exploitive and offensive in 1992. Although Sega denied all of these claims and pointed out that the game was supposed to be a spoof of old-timey horror films, they were forced to remove the game from markets in 1994, only to re-release it mildly censored years later. These controversies were seen as a national concern and were brought to the U.S. Senate. A joint congressional hearing in 1993 December took up a growing concern that the gaming industry was irresponsibly marketing violent video games to minors. Senator Joe Lieberman introduced the Video Game Ratings Act of 1994, which sought to establish a federal commission to create an industry-wide standard for game ratings. The content rating system for the ESRB is as follows: EC for early childhood, E for everyone, E10 everyone ages 10 and up, T for teen 13 and up, M, mature, for everyone 17 and up, and the rarely used AO rating, adults only, for everyone 18 and up. Although mature games have explanations as to why they're rated as such, some explanations are left in the air. There are certain criteria for a game to be rated M. All M games do not contain the same themes. While one mature game may have extreme graphical violence, another may only contain strong profanity and some sexual content. M games are purely based on if it contains blood, nudity, substances, profanity, and violence. By the age of 13, teens should be able to distinguish what is real and what is not, and should know better than to act out what they see in video games. Some of these themes shouldn't be enough to warrant the ban in certain households. One game series that comes to mind that I feel is not properly rated is the adventure novel series known as Phoenix Wright. The series follows a lawyer as he works his way through court cases in a courtroom and proves his client's innocence. This already seems tame enough with its T rating in place, but its most recent addition to the series was giving an M rating. There is no strong profanity, nor is there any form of extreme violence. There are only a few depictions of blood in court scene flashbacks, nothing more, which is why I feel it is deserving of a strong T rating. If a game only fits into one of these criteria and nothing else, they should be deserving of a T rating as well. Some other games in this category I feel should be Until Dawn, the Persona series, the Elder Scrolls series, and the Halo series. As I stated before, not all M games are extremely graphic in nature, which is why I feel if the proper research is done on them and a certain amount of trust is had, teens should be able to play these games on their own. Teens are going to be exposed to this content one way or another, and it's up to the parents to discuss these issues with them beforehand. Parents feel that if their children are exposed to any of these elements from violent video games, that they are more susceptible to imitate them in real life. There has been some speculation that there could be a link between violence in real life and violence in video games. There has been some presented evidence that violent video games do in fact increase violent thoughts. This suggests that kids who are more immersed in violent video games may be more likely to get into physical fights, argue with teachers, or display anger and hostility. For example, it has been noted that the Virginia Tech shooter Cho Sun-hui was someone who might have been influenced by violent video games by playing the more popular game CSGO, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, where you take the side of the U.S. Army fighting against terrorists or taking the side of terrorists fighting against anybody who opposes them. These studies are so vague that the link isn't really clear whether or not these incidents could be related. Besides playing violent video games, genetics and environmental aspects and self-control must be considered as some of the factors that contribute to the increase in aggressiveness. Genetics play a huge role in the personality of someone. If some people might have a tendency to be more aggressive and rebellious than some other people. Pathological acts, of course, have multiple complex causes and are terribly hard to predict. And clearly, millions of people play Counter-Strike, Halo, Doom, and never commit any of these crimes. With all of this being said, there is no basis for the link between violence and video games. If a violent act is committed, it all comes down to a teen's self-control and how they're able to handle themselves. I have explained why the ESRB has set in place and why teens should be able to be trusted to not imitate what they see and what they play in mature-rated video games. Regulations and parents' rules will not prevent any of these children from playing the games that they want to. They will always find a way to get their hands on these games, whether it be from a friend, another family member, or some other source. Banning these games and making these games illegal in these households are only going to want to make these children play these games even more and increase their curiosity to see what all the controversy is about. Thank you. And here is my audience again.